All right, welcome everyone. Holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers as is known. Going to welcome everyone. Again, holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. We are holding by chapter 2, Mishna 13, part 22, and most likely there'll probably be a part 23 and part 24 as we move along over here. So the Mishna said, we'll just mention what it said before, that he said to them, go out and discern what is the proper way which a man should cling, a person should cling. Rabbi Lezer says a good eye, Rabbi Yeshua says a good friend, Rabbi Yossi says a good neighbor, Rabbi Shimon says one who considers the outcome of a deed, and that's where we were holding right now, and Rabbi Lezer says a good heart. We'll see if we get to that part or not in a little bit. And he, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, said to them, I prefer the words of Eliezer ben Arach to your words, for your words were included in his words. So let's see what that means. So we're still holding by what Rabbi Lezer said. What Rabbi Shimon said. You know, one who considers the outcome of a deed. So we spoke last week in detail, spoke quite a bit about repercussions for our actions and the serious repercussions for, when a person does the right thing. We say every day, it's part of the Shema, we do the right thing, then there's going to be, we're going to have, we'll have proper livelihood, we'll have food, God will take care of our needs. And it also says if we do the wrong thing, there's going to be payback, right? There'll be payback, could be in this world, could be certainly in the next world. Person could come back, as a reincarnated soul, right? Could come back as an animal, could come back as as a rock, could come back as, any number of things. So the point is that there are repercussions, and we spoke quite a bit about that. We spoke quite a bit about that last week, about repercussions. One thing I do want to mention, about that is that someone had sent me a video which I put up. On one of my pages. There was a video by Rav Nisan Yagain, blessed memory. Did a lot of Jewish outreach, and he tells the story. Basically, tells the story of what happened, to a certain person. And that person basically had, 2 or 3 out-of-body experiences, meaning that they're clinically dead, basically clinically dead, and their soul, had gone out of their body, understood that can't get back in the body, and was being judged in the heavenly court, saw their whole life flash before them. There were a number of times where basically died, never should have come back to life. And one of the times someone had said, well, how long does a person get judged? How long does a person get judged in the next world? So we say the mourner's prayer, let's say for a parent that dies, is an obligation to mourn for 12 months. Now the question is, how long do you say the mourner's prayer? So most rabbinic authorities hold you say the mourner's prayer, in every prayer service for 11 months. And then you say the mourner's prayer again, on the day of their yahrzeit, the day commemorating, the death when they passed away. Some say you can even say it the 12th month. Some say that, you don't say it every day, but many rabbinic authorities hold you don't say it in the 12th month, because if a person gets judged, for 12 months, then they're considered evil. So we don't want to show that the person's evil, etc. But the point, what's my point over here? The point is that this person, Rabbi Yagain, was telling the story. This person was given a number of chances. He's given one chance, And he said, yeah, I understand it's a real severe punishment here. I want to be given another chance, to repent. He didn't repent. So another time he had, he was basically dead. He was basically dead. And he was given another opportunity, right? This time, I think it was 3 times. I remember 2 or 3 times, right? But the last time that he got judged and he came in front of the heavenly court, told him that you're going to suffer for 2,800 years in hell. You're going to get punished, all kinds of punishments for 2,800 years. Someone's going to say, what do you mean? A person should only get punished for 12 years. Sorry, for 12 months. 11 maximum. We need, 11 months, 12 months. We had 2,800 years. So the Gemara tells a number of stories of people, even non-Jews, that can be punished forever. Doesn't just mean 12 months. Right? The Gemara says by Titus, who destroyed the temple. What did Titus say before he died? He said, I want my body burned. I want the ashes scattered all over the 7 seas. And that way, the God of Israel won't be able to judge me for all the terrible things I did. Right? So the Gemara says, so what was his judgment? They brought him up with the whole question, how are you allowed to bring up a soul in general, which is really should be forbidden. But in any case, they brought up his soul and they asked him, okay, what's your punishment? What's your punishment in that world? So Titus said, my punishment is every single day, God gathers my ashes. He puts them back. He puts me back together, makes me into a human form, and he burns me again. Every single day for eternity. Now, why do I mention that? I mention that because in this story, this person got a judgment of 2,800 years. So he had some merit that the Baal Shem Tov came and interceded. Right? That's the way the story goes. That's the way he told the story. That the Baal Shem Tov appeared, the holy Baal Shem Tov appeared. It's good for Saturday night stories. After Shabbos, by the third meal on Shabbos. So stories of great rabbis, etc. So the Baal Shem Tov, for whatever reason, interceded and pleaded with the heavenly court to give another chance. So the heavenly court acquiesced, and they said, okay, the holy Baal Shem Tov here is, we're going to listen to him. We're going to put him back in his body, right? But this is it. This is the last chance. Otherwise, you should have got this punishment of 2,800 years. Should have got that punishment. And he didn't, right? In the end, he didn't. He came back to his body, and that's when he repented. And he went to yeshiva, and he learned, and, all that. So I mentioned this story because, I just got this video the other day, or whatever, sometime last week. So when we mentioned before that, Rebbe Shimon says one who considers the outcome of a deed. So you have to realize, whatever we do, there are repercussions. There can be good repercussions. There can be bad repercussions. The repercussions could be catastrophic. Could cost a person their life. Right? Totally cost them their life. Just actually read a story earlier today. There was a rabbi who taught children for 28 years. 28 years. And very, very successful. The kids loved him and, etc. And he would teach them Chumash. He would teach them the some of the parshas of Shmos, of the book of Exodus, talk about the Exodus from Egypt. One year, he wanted to teach Parshas Mishpatim, the parsha we just read. Right? Parsha we just read all about the laws of damages. Right? Probably the single biggest parsha of the Torah, or the most mitzvahs given. Right? That in the law, talking about the laws of damages and slaves and and all that. But so when he went to his principal and he said he wanted to teach this also, principal said no. Principal said no. It's gonna be too hard for them, whatever. And he said no. So he said, okay. That principal left 10 years later. He asked the new principal, and he agreed. He said, yeah, if you have the ability to give it over in a way that they're going to really understand it and review it and know it, Okay, you have to have, a lot of times for them to review and whatever. But he said, yeah, he allowed him to do it. And he was successful doing it. But what happened? It's a kind of a crazy story. What happened was he's in the prime of his life, and he was teaching. In the middle of teaching, he blacked out, fainted, totally blacked out, and is basically unconscious. What happened? They found out he had an aneurysm, right? But he was conscious in the sense that he was brought up, his soul was brought up to the Beis Din Shamayim, the heavenly court, and he's being judged. Now, why does aneurysm happen? Why all this? Because the heavenly court, there was a claim against him. What was the claim? There were 5 representatives of 5 Torah portions in the book of Exodus. And in those, so they were claiming, you wanted to teach Parshas Mishpatim. You wanted to teach these kids, this one parsha because, it's so detailed, whatever. What about us? You've been teaching us for years. Every single, the first 5 parshas of the book of Exodus, all about the exodus from Egypt and all about the plagues. And, so they had a claim. I mean, it's hard to imagine, right? But they had a claim. They said, hey, why are we losing out? Why should we lose out over here? What? You've been teaching us for years and years. All of a sudden, now you think you got the right not to teach us and teach Parshas Mishpatim? You're only going to teach that Parsha, not us? They had a claim. They absolutely had a claim. He's liable for death penalty. I mean, hard to imagine. Very hard. He's telling the story, right? Very hard to imagine, right? So he has this dream. Really, he's liable for a death penalty, right? He's liable for the death penalty. And this is why he had it. This is why he had this aneurysm, right? Out of nowhere, simply out of nowhere. So he agreed, okay, I'll stop teaching Parshas Mishpatim. I'll go back to teaching these other things, right? These other 5 parshas. They had a claim, right? They had a claim against him. He went back into his body, right? He came out of it, but he died 6 years later, 5 years later, 6 years later, I think. 6 years later, right? In other words, he was given a reprieve. We see, we don't know how these things work and what we do and what the repercussions are. So he said on himself before he died, right? What happened over here? Or someone said on him. I don't know if he said it. I don't remember exactly. But the point was, he's given another 5 or 6 years because he went back to teaching that. He went back to teaching, these other 5 parshas. But they were upset. They had a claim. And then one morning, he didn't wake up. And that's how he died, right? So now you're going to say, it's hard to understand, why, if he's doing such great work, how could they have a claim against him and potentially kill him? Parshas in the Torah have a claim, right? He's again, you're going to say, oh, made it up. This, it's a way out story. First of all, it happened in this generation. Second of all, he himself is telling the story, right? Obviously, it's before he died, right? He's telling the story, what happened to him, what he saw. Some people can say, no, it must have been on drugs, must have been this, must have been that. He's telling the story. That's the story, right? So we don't fathom whatsoever what we do in this world and what the repercussions are. You can say, wow, good story, whatever. But the point is, we don't know. People say, and I've heard this, ad nauseum, number of times, people make the claim, oh, the next world, they're not worried about that. It's only what I see, right? It's a parable, use the idea of a gun, right? Someone's got a gun, it's got 6 bullet holes. You put 1 bullet in, close it, person pull the trigger. No, got a 16.66667% chance blowing their brains out. Are they going to take the chance? Most people would not take the chance. I would say everybody wouldn't take the chance, right? Even if the odds are less, even if you had, even with the 10% chance, even if it was a 6% chance. But that's real, because you can say, well, it's Murphy's Law. You can pull the trigger, you can die. Who's going to take that chance? I don't think too many people would. Could be wrong. I don't think so. Now, if you say, listen, I got this story, I got other stories where people had out of body experiences, and what they saw and what they went through and how they came back to the body and different things, etc. So you're going to say, okay, they all claim similar things. What happens to when they die, right? The soul hovers above the body. Jew and non-Jew say the same thing. Man, woman, child, no difference. They say their life flashed before their eyes, everything they've done, right, in their life. They'll say that the soul hovers over the body, they're drawn to this great light, and whatever different things, that they see there, or God forbid, what they hear there, or whatever. Now, they're telling the story because they came back to the body. If they don't come back to the body, they die, right? Essentially, they die. So if everyone tells exactly what the Zohar says, exactly what according to Kabbalah says, what's going to happen when a person dies, right? Then you can't say, well, this is just a chance happening. The person's making it up. Okay, you got thousands of these cases, thousands, all saying the exact same thing. The exact same thing. They're going to say, is that proof God exists and all that, and the Torah is true? No. I'm not going to say it's full proof. It's one proof. I would say it's one proof. There are many other proofs, but that's not the purpose here. Right? The idea is, so a person will say, like my Rebbe would say, I've never met anyone been in that world and come back. Okay, so what? Does that mean there's no next world? Does that mean there's not reward and punishment? One of the 13 principles, right? If you're a Jew, you got to believe there's reward and punishment. One of the 13 principles of faith of the Rambam, of Maimonides. It's got to believe God is absolute, God is unique, God doesn't change, right? You have to believe in resurrection of the dead. You have to believe in coming of the Messiah. Moses, the greatest of all prophets, prophecy, God knows the thoughts of men, right? If a Jew doesn't believe in these things, he loses his status as a Jew. Now, that doesn't mean he can't get it back. That doesn't mean he can't repent. A non-Jew doesn't have these obligations, right? A non-Jew, you would say, okay, belief in God, they have to believe in God? Yes. One God? Yes. Do they have to believe the fact that he's unique in the world and that it's divine providence? No. Doesn't have to believe that. Doesn't have to believe there's reward and punishment. Is it a good thing for them to believe? Yeah. I would definitely say moral imperative, 100%. 100%. That they should believe. Obligation? No. Right? But they have to believe in one God. Right? So what's the point? What's the point of all this? I don't want to, rehash everything else. We spoke about last week. It's a huge topic. Huge topic. The point is, person has to consider, as we said before, we're going to go further with this, person has to consider what they do. Their actions have repercussions. They absolutely have repercussions, right? We can see that if a person, let's say, God forbid, causes someone damage. You see, the repercussions are direct. But we could speak about somebody, in a negative way. Let's say, God forbid, someone spoke Lashon Hara, they spoke badly against someone else. And they would be brazen to say, I would even say it in front of his face, right? I wouldn't be afraid to say it now. Is that going to cause them any damage? Technically, maybe not. Maybe it won't cause any damage. People will still be friendly with them, do business with them. They don't necessarily lose anything. What's the problem? You say, well, they could. It could cause them damage. True. But what's the real problem? What's the real problem over here? Person's going to say, it's true. And everybody knows it. So let's say it is. So let's say it's all over the papers, all over the internet, 100%, everyone agrees it's true, right? There's no lying, there's no misrepresentation, there's nothing. Everyone agrees. Everyone 100% agrees it's true. Comes on the Chofetz Chaim, comes wrong, Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan HaKohen, in a blessed memory, says the Chofetz Chaim, guess what? You can't do it. You're not allowed to repeat it. You're not allowed to repeat it even if it's true unless you have certain conditions. There are a number of conditions you have to meet in order to be able to repeat it. You have to have heard it yourself. It can't be hearsay. And you cannot, one of the things is you can't exaggerate. You have to tell it exactly the way it is. There's no exaggeration, right? There are a number of points. The Chofetz Chaim says at the end, even if you fulfill all these things, all these different points. So he says, even if you fulfill every last thing, who says you did it 100% the way you should have? He said, don't rely on it. But he said there are 7 conditions. There are 7 conditions where you're allowed to repeat it. Okay, but in the end, he said, not a good thing to do. Still not a good thing to do. But what's the problem? What's the main idea over here? You're going to say it's true. Everybody knows it. There's no issue. I can repeat it whenever I want. No. See, that's why non-Jews don't learn the laws of Lashon Hara. It doesn't make sense logically. That's something that doesn't make sense logically, right? Other things I would say, yeah, is it a good thing, that non-Jews don't speak badly against others? Sure. Is it an obligation? I wouldn't say it's an obligation per se, because there are a number of things that logically, according to the Torah, if we'd say it's universal, right, then we say it doesn't apply to them, right? There's one aspect. Because you ask any non-Jew, secular Jew out there, and you say, listen, I know something 100% is true. And everybody agrees it's 100% true. Right? So if you were to ask them, am I allowed to repeat that? Is there any problem repeating that? Everyone's going to say, what's the problem? Everybody knows it's true. You're not exaggerating. Right? Doesn't matter if you heard it firsthand or not. Everybody knows it's true. It's proven. Okay. George Washington cut down the cherry tree. Right? We all know that, right? I don't know. Maybe it's a myth. Maybe someone just made it up, make him look bad. Could be, right? But everyone will say, isn't it true? George Washington is, he chopped down the cherry tree. Yeah, but he probably had a good reason. Doesn't matter, right? Am I allowed to disparage him? Am I allowed to disparage him whenever I want, even if people know it's true? No. That'd be by a Jew. It doesn't necessarily apply to a non-Jew, but okay, that's not the point, right? The point is I got to be careful what I do, because the repercussions could be absolutely catastrophic, right? Absolutely catastrophic, right? Somebody ever asked, what if a person is traumatized psychologically and they sinned without realizing? Yeah, it's got to be judged differently. So someone with mental illness is a serious thing. Spoken about this. Mental illness, very serious thing, right? In other words, it's not something where you can just say, well, look what they did over here. They got messed up. They got messed up. Now the problem is, let's say they did it. They could have done it to themselves, not necessarily, through trauma. They could. It's easier. It's easier to say. Let's say they were bullied, they were traumatized, they were abused psychologically, physically, different ways. So you're gonna say they're gonna have issues, right? Most people in this case are gonna have issues. They're gonna have to, deal with them. Probably, see a professional, to have to deal with it. Trauma's not an easy thing. Certainly not an easy thing. And it could spiral in a negative way, tremendously negative way. Now, if that's true, even if that's true, right, you go down a very slippery slope here. Even if that's true, are they liable? If they do something, they cause someone damage because, someone damaged them, right? I'll throw this out there. We'll get a little bit, I don't know, maybe I'll get in trouble here, but it's okay. And that is that what if, what if a person, let's say, was abused physically, right? They're abused physically. Now, it's been proven that most pedophiles have been abused. They themselves have been abused. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, very hard to fix such a thing, but without going into all the psychology here, right? It's been proven that normally a pedophile who does this with children has been, had that done to them as a child. Now, the question is going to be, they're traumatized by what they went through, never dealt with it, or too hard to deal with, or whatever the case is, right? Let's say they never came out of it, which can happen, definitely can happen, the major trauma, right? Without, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, so you can take what I say with a grain of salt, right, on this, but some people never get over it, so, to certain levels. But even so, the question is, even if it happened to them. So let's say it happened to them, right? It happened, they didn't ask for it. They didn't have, whatever reason it happened, right? It happened. Now, if they do that to someone else, they're traumatized some will say these people can't be helped. Let's just say for argument's sake, all the therapy in the world, it's going to be very hard for them to change. Very, very hard, if not almost impossible. But okay, let's say they do it to someone else. They just, whatever, that's what they do. Now, if that's the case, are they liable? Are they liable for doing it to someone else? They're liable. 100%. 100% they're liable. You can't come along and say, well, it's not their fault. Well, whose fault is it? Right? I use an example. I'll date myself a little bit. Use Mike Tyson as an example. Yeah. So he got charged with rape, went to jail for a number of years. And what was his defense? I can't believe they put him on the defense stand, right? But they put him on the defense stand. And they asked him, okay, so what happened over here? So he said, this woman was in his room at 3 o'clock in the morning, his hotel room. And everyone knows I'm an animal, so what'd you expect? I don't know why you would put this person on the stand and let him, he got convicted straight away. Just because she's in his hotel room at 3 in the morning. Who cares what is, what's going on inside of him? What difference does it make? What difference does it make what his background is? Nobody cares. Nobody cares how he grew up, and he was on the streets, and nobody cares. He convicted him. 100%. Yeah. So, in such a case, you can't say, oh, look what happened to me. What do I care what happened to you? Look at the end result. Look at the end result, what you did. The end result is, okay, so you might be an animal. Okay, so what? But that means you can do whatever you want. That means you get free reign. Certainly not. You got convicted like you should have, right? If that was, if that was the evidence, it was done against her will. That's it, right? If that's been proven, he goes to jail. Right? That's what should happen. But what? So what about mental illness? Mental illness is a serious thing, right? I don't think there's any question. If a person, we'll flush this out there further. If a person's under the influence, drugs, and they do something, right? And they do something, fake you a homicide, right? Drunk driver. Person's got much more in the system, right? Much more alcohol than you're allowed, than you're allowed certainly to drive, right? They lose control and they kill someone. That manslaughter, it's murder. Murder. You're going to say, but I didn't know what he's doing. He was out of his mind, drunk, smashed, whatever. Drugs cause damage. What's going to happen? He's guilty. 100%, he's guilty. Now, the question is he going to go to jail? He's only going to get a suspended sentence. Whatever, it depends. It's a first offense, it's a second offense. It depends on the person's record. But everyone's going to say the person, just because the person lost control, totally lost control, doesn't mean he's not liable. You're sure liable, right? 100%, you're sure liable over here. Now, so let's say he's not on drugs. Let's just say he's loony. Person has, mental issues. A person, let's say, is schizophrenic, not on, they're not on their medication, or they're bipolar, right? Let's say they're bipolar and, their medication's off or something. They have an episode, right? And something happens. Now, yeah, it's a tragic thing, but a person not necessarily in control, right? They got a chemical imbalance. It makes them do all kinds of things, makes them hallucinate. Imagine, a person, they can fly. They go off, they're on a 3-story building. They jump. They say, look, I can fly. Well, not going to come out so good, right? But they do other things. They can do other things. They can attack people, injure people. Let's say they don't even kill someone. They injure someone, but they don't have any recollection because they're out of their mind. They're off the medication or whatever the case is. Can cause problems. If somebody, how does the Torah look at it? Mental illness is a serious thing. There's no question, right? So the Torah is going to look at it and say, okay, it's going to be guilty. Depends what they do. Depends, what they've done, right? The other question will be, but they're not in control, right? That's the catch-22. They're not in control of their mind. So if they're not in control of their mind, then how far does it go? Do we say, wow, he had this episode, he had this thing, but that wasn't really him. That wasn't, I shouldn't say him, her, whatever, right? It wasn't them. was something else that overcame them, right? Overtook them or whatever. Right. So yeah. So in a court of law, they'll probably string them up, right? Probably put them in insane asylum, get them evaluated, proper medication, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not liable here. They cause damage, right? That's what this whole part is about damage. Doesn't matter if you know what you're doing or not. So it could be in certain things, maybe it depends. If they had mental illness, they're under onus. Maybe you tell me it's onus. They're not in control. Totally not in control. So if they're totally not in control, maybe I'll say, right? I'll look at it in a different way. And I'll say that they're not in control, so why they're liable? It's not in their power to be in control. Right? Now, explain that to somebody who they just, they just like broke into their house and broke all kinds of stuff and caused all kinds of damage. And say, well, he didn't know what he was doing because he's off his medication. They're going to charge them for sure. And then the person will be evaluated psychologically. But, or do we say that maybe, maybe he doesn't have to pay, right? Maybe, his parents will have to pay. Someone will have to pay, right? But he himself can't pay. Why not? He didn't know what he's doing. He had no idea, right? His brain exploded, for different reasons, right? So that's not going to look so good. You're going to say, what? He's under onus? How far does onus go? Right? Let's say, a person was a pedophile and they're in therapy for 20 years, 25 years, but they still didn't help them. They're still doing it here, there, whatever. They're still guilty over here. Do we say that's onus? Do we say a person like that, well, if he can never be helped, God created him that way, that's his own fault? Not his own fault. Right? Maybe you say, well, God put this in a person's system. No, right? Psychologically, again, I'm not a therapist, so you can take what I say with a grain of salt, right? But it has been brought down that someone who acts in such a way, they're not born that way. No one is born a pedophile. Now, it could be they were, it happened to them, and that's why. But it's not. It's such an unnatural thing, right? Hard to imagine, impossible to imagine. God put that in someone's system. Now, homosexuality might be different, right? People say, oh, there's a homosexual gene. And that, that's also an unnatural thing, right? Totally, at least according to Torah, for sure, right? Totally unnatural. But someone can say, come on, some people are born a certain way. So we have all kinds of bad genes, right? We mentioned this before. We all have all kinds of bad genes, right? We can have an anger gene. We could have I don't like to eat matzah gene. I don't like to pray gene. A lot of things. But God says, I don't want you to act on this. I don't want you to act in such a way. What's the problem? So a person may be wired, right? Everyone has a disadvantage. We have certain disadvantages. Everyone's wired a certain way, right? Not because of what we've done, right? A person's born. They have a certain DNA. They got that DNA from their parents. So they have a certain DNA. And so God puts in there other things also. Whatever they may be. So some people have certain disadvantages in some things. Others have other things. Some have more of this, some have less of this, whatever it is. So you're going to say, if God gave me this DNA and God put me on this world, right, and gave me this DNA, why is it my fault? Why is it my fault? We could easily say after 120 years, what? You're going to tell me I'm guilty of this or guilty of that? You may be that way. Now, again, let's say it's not something you learned. It's not something that happened to you. You were born a certain way. You have a certain tendency towards X, whatever it is. And you acted on it. So you're going to come up after 120 years. You're going to tell God, what? You telling me I'm guilty? You made me that way. What's God going to say? So I'll put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache. What would I say if I was God? Just say, right. I did create you this way. I did give you a certain DNA. You're 100% right. But there's one caveat over here. Even if that's true, I didn't create you for that. That's not what I wanted you to do. I gave you that to try and for you to overcome. Maybe that's what you're doing in this world. That's the thing you have to overcome, right? Whatever it is. That one rabbi once explained to me. I don't know if this is 100% true. Everybody's here for a purpose. We all have what to work on, right? They're going to say, well, how do I know what my purpose is? How do I know what my purpose is? Right? So one rabbi once explained to me, figure out the thing that is most difficult in your life to overcome. In other words, you would rather, I don't know, you would rather slit your veins in your eyeballs with glass before you do it. I don't want to be that graphic, right? But it's something that like goes so against your grain, you would never, ever, ever, we'd say in Boston, you never want to do it. You would never do it, right? So it could be, again, could be, I'm not saying it is, but could possibly be, that's what I'm here to fix. If it be something so easy, okay, that's it. You finish your potential. Whatever that potential is, you're done. You know, you're not needed in this world anymore. Most people, I would think, most people, what they have to overcome or what they're here in this world to potentially fix is something not going to be that easy. In other words, to be that easy, I'm not worth, you know, if it's anything that's so easy, you know, it's not worth, you know, it's not worth it. You know, if I can accomplish this or accomplish that, it's too easy. Come on. You know, no one's going to want to do it. But if it's something that's, you know, extremely challenging, a lot of people probably say, no, you know, I'm just going to give up before I start. You know, it's just way too hard. Right. But, you know, we don't know the full level of what our potential is. That's the whole point of it. We don't know the full level, you know, of what our actions do and how they affect others. But make no mistake, you know, a person is not going to be able to use this excuse and say, you know, I was under onus, you know, if that doesn't work. Or, you know, people will say, God put me in a situation which was too hard to overcome, way too hard to overcome. So we also don't believe that. We believe a person's given whatever situation in life, and whatever that situation is, it may be hard, maybe seem impossible, but we believe that whatever situation we're in, that God is giving us the ability to overcome it. Not that he put us in a situation to fail. And the only question is how much. Right? In other words, we're given an opportunity to succeed. Now, does that mean the obstacles and the variables are going to be easy to overcome? No. Maybe some are easier. Maybe some are more difficult, you know, whatever it is. But no one is ever in that situation. I know of a story. I don't know the details. I don't know all the details or many of the details. I'll just throw this out there also. There was a woman, could be a guy, doesn't really matter, right? Somebody became religious. They you know, as a Jew, they became, you know, religious later in life. And they lived in Israel for a number of years, were very, very strong. And they ended up going back to the States. Now, the problem was they didn't really have an infrastructure to go back to. I don't think also this person had what I would say das Torah, like, you know, someone, you know, a rabbinic authority or someone, you know, to guide them. And basically their family put a lot of pressure on them to be like they were before. In other words, they started making fun of what they do, and, you know, they weren't so responsive, and, you know, all these things. This person did not have support of a community for whatever reason. And basically, they crumbled under the pressure, went back to who they were, because the pressure of family destroyed them. Now, this person claims, again, I'm not judging here one way or the other, right? But this person claims that God put them in an untenable situation. God put them in a situation to fail. In other words, they were put in a situation that they couldn't handle. Now, we hold, as Torah tells us, you know, as the commentaries tell us, not true. It might be a hard situation. It might feel like an impossible situation, but why would God do that and punish you at the same time? In other words, if it's an untenable situation, one example, give a Torah example. Famous example, beginning of Parshas Bo, the Torah tells us that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Right? What's the obvious question? Obvious question is, if God hardened his heart, why is he punishing? Right? Why in the world does he punish him? He shouldn't get punished over here. Reason is because his free will is taken away. If his free will is taken away, right, they should be punished. So the Rambam addresses this in the laws of repentance. You know, others address the question as well. Point is that we know we know of one case in history. We know of one case in history that somebody's free will was taken away. So that the question is, if his free will is taken away, can't punish him. He's under onus, right? So Rebbe says, one thing we have to keep in mind is if we go down a certain path and we continue going down a certain path and things don't change and we're not growing from it and changing or whatever, so my Rebbe would say, how do you know God is not hardened your heart and taken away free will? So you're going to say, but we all have free will. Everybody has free will, right? But he says, some things you'll say, a person may feel it's so hard to change, like impossible to change. It's just like a bad cycle. Keeps happening over and over and over, right? Doesn't change. So Rebbe would say, how do you know your heart hasn't been hardened? But you're also liable. That's the catch. That's the catch 22 here, is that you're going to be liable also. Because you're going to say, well, you may be this way, so what can you do? I'm under onus. Who says? You have free will. No one's holding a gun to anybody's head. You have free will to do certain things. You want to, but you're going to say, but if you do certain things so often, it's going to be hard to change, right? As we always say, it's part of your psyche. You're right. And when it's part of your psyche and it's part, it's part of your insides and you keep doing it over and over and over again, yeah, it's part of you. So that makes it much more difficult to change. True. Right. But again, if I were playing God, what would my answer be? My answer would be, I didn't tell you to do this. I didn't tell you to act in such a way. Because I didn't tell you to act in such a way, there's no onus. You did it to yourself. Right? As the Talmud tells us, if you want to go in the right way, God will help you. If you want to go in the wrong way, God will not punish you. So if you wanted help, I could help you. You don't want help, okay. That's your choice. You can go down your own path. It's your choice. You're going to fail miserably, but okay. I don't have to take you out of it. You didn't ask me for help. Like, what do you want from me? So the person will say, but it's not fair. I'm under onus. God says, what onus? Why is there onus? No one's forcing you. You did it to yourself. 100%. That's going to be a hard thing. That's going to be part of what hell is going to be, is the embarrassment. The sheer embarrassment after 120 years, we have to answer for what we've done. Now, we can't say you didn't do it, because everybody says when they have an out-of-body experience, everybody says they see their life flash before their eyes, every last thing that they've done, just when you thought it was safe to read National Geographic in the bathroom. Think again. Right? Not so clear. So you can't say, well, I didn't have my hand in the cookie jar. God said you had your hand in the cookie jar. So why'd you have your hand in the cookie jar? Oh, so now you're going to make excuses. Now you're going to say because of this, because of that. But if you're in the world of truth, no excuses. Right? Just like we're recording now. Right? You have two angels follow you every day. Everywhere you go. Writing everything down. So when a person gets judged, God's going to bring up all the angels that you created from your actions. Good angels, bad angels. Right? Depending on what you did and how you did it, where you were holding. All these great things, and what's going to happen? You're going to get judged, just like in a heavenly court. Going to say, bring the evidence, right? Show me the evidence. God's going to say the same thing. Does God need to do that? No. Doesn't God know everything? Sure. He doesn't have an issue, right? But he set up the heavenly court like a court in this world. Going to hear the testimony, hear the evidence. The court will judge. Court will judge as they see fit. Point over here is what I do matters. And there's nothing insignificant. So you're going to say, but I got to be on my toes all the time. Yeah. Got to be careful what I say, what I do. True. Someone here asked, but it said something about one person. And that person heard and agreed and even laughed. Is that Lashon Hara? It depends. If what a person said is in fact Lashon Hara, and you heard it, let's say a person heard it, and they believed it, they're guilty. They're guilty for believing it. But let's say you're in a position where people, are speaking Lashon Hara. They're saying all these things. And you're sitting there, what do? Try and change the subject. Try and walk away. You can't do either. You cannot believe 100% what a person says, which means that you have to work hard. You have to work hard not to believe what they said. If it can possibly cause you damage, right, then you're allowed to guard yourself. You're allowed to guard yourself against such a thing, but you're not allowed to believe it 100%. Right? So even, let's say, if a person spoke Lashon Hara and a person was quiet, that doesn't necessarily mean they accepted what they said. If a person in their mind accepted what was said, that's a different issue. Then they accepted Lashon Hara. That's forbidden. If they were quiet because they thought no one would listen and they're only going to get made fun of, and all that, but in their mind, they're not believing anything the person says, okay? Just because they heard Lashon Hara doesn't mean they're guilty of accepting it. But if they accepted it, that's a problem, right? If they laughed, that doesn't necessarily mean it's Lashon Hara, right? Let's say you didn't say anything. Person said something against someone else and you laughed. You might be guilty of something else. You're not necessarily guilty of speaking Lashon Hara, right? That's not necessarily Lashon Hara. I would think that's bad in other ways. Nobody likes to be, the butt of a joke. In other words, you get made fun of, and everyone around you seems to laugh. Well, I think I got some of that, certainly, certainly while I was in the States, and being called certain things. Okay. Like, there was no point. Certain things I answered because I felt deserved an answer. Other things, yeah, I'm not going to say not, people chuckled, people laughed, this. Is that Lashon Hara? It may be true, right? Even what the person said is true. Okay. But you're the recipient. Anyone who's been the butt of a joke, it's not so funny unless you think it's funny. Right? Unless you don't care. But if you do care, guess what? It's like you've just been embarrassed in public. Embarrassed in public, I'll just throw this out there. Being embarrassed in public is an offshoot of murder. The Gemara says it's an offshoot of murder. Why is it an offshoot of murder? It's an offshoot of murder for one very simple reason. First of all, the person who said it, the person what happened to, they turn white, then they turn red. Red meaning, right, similar to blood. So many rabbinic authorities hold you don't lose your portion of the world to come for such a thing. Right? Even if a person murdered, right? God forbid, someone else. There is a difference of opinion whether you lose your portion of the world to come or not. Rabbeinu Yonah states clear. In his book, Gate to Repentance. Rabbeinu Yonah says that if a person embarrassed someone in public, you're guilty of murder and you lose your portion of the world to come. That is a very severe thing. Not everyone agrees with this, but that's a very severe thing. Why? Because if, according to many rabbinic authorities, you're not going to be liable, you're not going to lose your portion of the world to come for murder, how can you say you lose your portion of the world to come if you embarrass someone in public? Even if you want to tell me it's an offshoot of murder. It's not really murder. But you'll tell me, anyone who's ever been embarrassed in public, they feel like they want to go crawl underneath a rock or go to some cave and hide, or hide under their bed or something, right? Because they've totally been shamed. So they'll say, well, it'd be much easier to just shoot them in the head, right? It's the same feeling, right? The same feeling. But the reality is, it's a very hard thing to say. Even if that is true psychologically, it's very, very hard to say. If murder itself, you don't lose your portion of the world to come, how can it be? Even if you want to tell me it's an offshoot of murder, how can you tell me you lose your portion of the world to come? It's pretty severe. It's pretty darn severe, right? So here, someone said something. Talking about the one who said it, the one who spoke Lashon Hara. Someone else left. Are they guilty? They're sure they're guilty. Person who said it, for sure they're guilty, right? Right. That is no question. What about the person talked about? So they're not guilty. What are they guilty of? Person talked about. Again, when someone speaks Lashon Hara, you kill three people. You kill yourself. I mean, not literally necessarily, but you kill yourself for saying it. You kill other people for listening, for hearing it, and you kill the person who was said about. Now, the person who heard it, let's say better, the person who was said about it, what are they guilty for? They're not guilty of anything. right? Someone spoke, Ruvain spoke Lashon Hara against Shimon, right? Levi and Yitzhak were there when Ruvain said it, they both laughed. Now, it doesn't mean, now that's a problem in and of itself, they laughed, right? It doesn't necessarily make it Lashon Hara. But the person they spoke about is certainly not guilty. He's certainly not guilty. In other words, the person who you spoke about, why is he guilty? He's not guilty. The ones that laughed, they're guilty for sure. Not necessarily they spoke Lashon Hara, right? But they're getting enjoyment out of what was said against this person. So if it would be forbidden, 100% they're guilty, right? Now if they're quiet, that'd be a different issue, right? If they're quiet, doesn't necessarily mean they agree. Maybe they have an obligation to say something. Maybe they have an obligation. Could be. Even if no one's going to listen. Even if no one's going to listen, who cares? Right? Who cares over here? Shouldn't matter. The fact that they don't say anything. There's also another Talmudic dictum. It's called shtika kahoda dami. If a person's quiet, it's like they agree. But in this case, the person can be thinking in their mind, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to believe it's true. Different things, okay. But if they burst out laughing about it, again, some would say, yeah, they're guilty. They're guilty, of speaking Lashon Hara. First of all, they didn't speak Lashon Hara, but it could be they're laughing. It's like they agree, right? So that could be. That very well could be. If they say nothing, that's not necessarily, a guarantee they're guilty. Definitely not a guarantee, right? They could be saying different things in their mind, not to believe what was said. Okay. But certainly the person spoken against, they're not guilty. It doesn't matter even if it's true. So someone asks, does Lashon Hara affect you when you don't even know that someone speaks about you? Oh, it can't? It can cause irreparable damage. Irreparable damage, right? Someone, you didn't hear about a certain thing. Someone spoke, let's say this sometimes happens, God forbid, when people are checking out a prospective boy or girl from marriage, right? So it could be somebody says something about the person that's not true, right? We'll make it easy. It's something that's not true, or even better, well exaggerated, right? Well exaggerated might be true to a small point, but way over exaggerated. Let's say. And now that person, it's going to be much more difficult for that person to get married. Now, even if the person doesn't know, even the person never finds out, the prospect of that person getting married because of this information, totally detrimental. Totally detrimental. Does that mean the person won't get married? No. Definitely doesn't mean that. But there could be irrevocable damage. That's been done over here. I just read a story, of whatever, something like this. Something like this where something is said, and it doesn't get back to the family looking in, but time after time, they're not, there's something going on where they're now not getting any inquiries. Damage has been done. Totally been done. So even if the person doesn't know, even if they don't know about it, certainly could affect. Certainly could affect. What if someone, makes up something, let's say makes up something about someone's business practice. And not true. Totally not true. It doesn't get back to the person. But people, stop going to the store or do business with such a person. Can that affect them? Sure. 100%. We don't necessarily see the effect. Even if they don't know about it. They have no idea what the far-reaching effect could be. They have no idea. Some things I would say, are much more direct. Some things I would say are less direct. But regardless, it could cause unbelievable damage. That is the reason, or one of the reasons, that you got to be careful what a person says in general. We don't know the far-reaching results. Some things I think are more obvious that could cause damage straight away, right? Many other things I would say no. I would say we don't, maybe there won't be any far-reaching repercussions, even if they don't know, right? Even if they don't know. My Rebbe would say all the Lashon Hara they've spoken about, against him. The Chovos Levavos says in Duties of the Heart in Sharach Niyap, chapter 7, right? In the gate of subservience, what does he talk about? Someone speaks Lashon Hara against someone else, and they're guilty, then that person who they spoke about, you get all their mitzvahs. Unless the person repents. You get all their mitzvahs. So a friend of mine once said, you want those mitzvahs? Says, you really want those mitzvahs? Someone spoke badly against you. Somebody demolished you like no tomorrow. Right? They're guilty. We're going to make it easy. They're guilty. So it comes along, the Chovos Levavos, the duty of the heart, and he says, guess what? You get all their mitzvahs. So my friend would say, you want those mitzvahs? You get those mitzvahs. Whatever mitzvahs the person did. Now, can you get them back? Yeah, if there's repentance. If there's proper repentance, and get them back. Right? But my Rebbe's always fond of saying, people say all kinds of things against him. And he says, yeah, so let him talk. Or he'd say, let him go eat kugel. Right? No different. Let him talk. Let him talk. I'll get all their mitzvahs. And he said, I could care less. Right? Totally care less. Right? But yeah, it has a very, very serious effect, even if you don't know about it. Because as far as it goes, we don't know. We don't know what the repercussions are, what the potential repercussions are. Yeah, but there could be unbelievable repercussions. I mean, if you're talking about a case where you don't even know they said it. But if a person did find out, yeah, that's 10 times worse. 10 times worse, but it doesn't matter. Because even if you didn't find out, guess what? They're guilty. They're for sure guilty. Right? But it could have any number of repercussions. We don't know. We don't know what it could do. Like I said, I think certain things are more obvious. And other things, we may never see how far it goes. Right? But the person himself who said it can be affected in a myriad of ways. Many, many ways. They can be affected. The ones who said it, and they may never see it based on the life they lived. They may never make that connection. Say, oh, because I did this, this happened and that happened. They may never see they may never see how far it goes. Okay. Right? That doesn't mean it's not going to have certainly repercussions for them. How bad does it speak about against a dead person? Dead person, so the halacha is before Rosh Hashanah, if God forbids, or let's say before Yom Kippur, let's say better, before Yom Kippur, if a person, God forbid, spoke Lashon Hara against someone else, what should you do? What should you do? So the halacha is, you should go to the grave, ask for forgiveness. And what happens if you can't get there? It's in another state, it's in another country, right? What do you do? So you get 10 people together, go to the grave, tell them to go to the grave and say, so-and-so, sinned against you, and they ask for forgiveness. So I remember I once asked the rabbi this question, why do you have to go that far? You have to go to the grave, even if it's far away, or you have to hire people to go there, or send people there, whatever the case is. Why is it so severe? Why is it so severe? So this rabbi answered very simple. You spoke about somebody, you spoke badly against someone who cannot defend themselves. But they may never have heard it anyway, doesn't matter. You spoke against someone who's defenseless. Someone who's defenseless can never, certainly not in this world, they're never going to be able to defend themselves against what the person said. Why not? They're dead. Dead people don't speak. Right? Usually. Dead people don't speak. So now you cause damage and you spoke against someone who can't say anything in their defense. You're lucky you get off that easy. Why should there be repentance? It'd be kind of like, I don't know, it's probably a bad parable, right? It's like, it'd be like, take a blind person, put a stumbling block in front of them, or hit them upside down. They can't defend themselves. Can't see. Right? Totally can't see. I mean, it's probably a bad example. Right? They can't defend themselves. There's no possible way. So you spoke badly against them and it got out in the world. Now you're going to destroy this person's potentially whatever's left of their reputation, who knows what, and they can't fix it. There's nothing they can do. They're dead. Now, could that bring up certain things in heaven and open up your file and God could judge you for doing something? Yeah, it could be severe. Could very well be severe, but as the Chofetz Chaim says, the laws of Yom Kippur, you got an opportunity to repent. You got an opportunity to go to their grave. You can't get there, hire people, send people, right? But you're doing something where the person themselves cannot defend themselves. So that is a pretty severe prohibition. You're going to say, and even if the person was alive. Yeah, the person's alive is a different issue. It's still bad. I'm not going to say not. But at least, they could defend themselves, and what they did or whatever, right? So you got to say about they didn't know about it. So, they didn't know about it. It could cause unbelievable damage. But here you're talking about someone who can't defend themselves. Right? I always, when I go through these halachas before Yom Kippur, I'm always reminded of that. It's like, if you speak Lashon Hara, God forbid, against a dead person, and it is Lashon Hara, yeah, you got to go to their grave, or you got to send someone to their grave. That's how severe it is, right? That's you're hitting someone where they can't defend themselves. If they can't, and it's going to cause more damage, when they're dead or whatever. Who knows? Who knows? Even if it doesn't cause them damage, so they never find out about it. Okay, but guess what? God knows. God knows what you said. God knows what you did. Even if it doesn't cause any damage, right? There's the whole question, like, this week's parsha talks about stealing. What would happen if you stole, God forbid, someone stole in order to return it? They said, listen, I'm going to take this money illegally. I'm going to put it back straight away. 2 days, I'm going to put it back. They'll never know it was gone. Let's say. Does that make it right? Doesn't make it right. It's Geneva. Stealing. Right? But you're going to say, but I fixed it. I didn't really have intention to take it. I needed it for now. Now I'll give it back in 2 days. So you didn't give it back in 2 days. Right? Yeah, you fixed it up by returning it, but it doesn't mean you didn't steal. You're guilty. Right? 100%. People will do things, just throw this out there, certainly for the sake of heaven, and, with all the right intentions, quote unquote. But what they're doing is wrong. I'm saying everywhere across the board, it depends what it is. But, in such a case, it's for the sake of heaven, this and that. Not true. Everybody has biases. You gotta really check. Are you getting benefit from this? You're not getting benefit from this. Why is the person saying this? Why is the person doing this? There's a lot of things we see in the world we don't fathom, we don't understand. Right? And sometimes there could be payback for who knows what. Things we said. I got a case going on. Gosh, long time, more than 30 years. Hasn't come up in a long time. But I made a comment. Years ago. And the comment, I'm not gonna say what the comment was, but I made a comment and I said, I feel like X. I didn't say I was X. I said, I feel like X. All right, whatever it was. So it came back to haunt me. Because, in that argument, the person will say, see, you said this. I said, no, I didn't say this. This is how the conversation goes. You said this. My answer was, I didn't say this. I said, I felt like X. I didn't say I was X. And that's where the conversation goes. And it keeps going around. It never ends. I never win the conversation. But you said that, but I didn't. Right? I said, I feel like this. I didn't say I was this. but they're not hearing it. So this conversation, thank God, has come up in a very long time, right? But a person makes a statement, you gotta be careful. People can get offended, even if what you're saying is the truth. But even if you're saying something where you're not accusing them of anything, you just said, I felt like this. Oh, you are this? I didn't say that. Right? It keeps going. It's like a bad Freddy Krueger movie. It's like you're going over and over, like you're in this dream. You said this. No, I did it. Yes, you did. No, I did it. Like, you don't win. You don't win that conversation. I just end the conversation. Okay, you're right. I shouldn't have said it. I never win the conversation. Right? I take my lumps and that's it. You move on. Right? But you got to be careful. When a person makes a statement, you have to see how someone potentially will take it. Because when a person talks, we could have what we call diarrhea of the mouth. People just talk, they don't think. A lot of people like this, right? They don't care what they say. And if you get offended, they'll say, you're too sensitive, maybe. But, you say something offensive and, people don't care. They just say, quote, Whoopi Goldberg, got to suck it up. That's it. It is what it is. Right? But, even if a person makes somewhat of an innocent statement, you got to see. You got to be careful, right? That's the whole point. Which, this Mishna is that Rabbi Shimon said you got to consider the outcome of a deed. You got to consider the outcome of what I say. Even if it's true. Some people feel that, they have the truth, and we believe we do have the truth. Doesn't mean you have to ram it down someone's throat. Doesn't mean that. Now, someone asks you a question, they want to understand, different things, okay. And if someone's got an agenda, right? Someone's got an agenda. You don't answer an agenda, right? That's why by Passover, right? As we always say, by the evil son, right? The evil son, you give him an answer, and you say, the Haggadah says, Yahaka es shinov. What does Haka es shinov mean? It means you blunt his teeth. In other words, just give him an answer. You throw him out an answer. He deserves an answer. Okay, but why? You're throwing out something, you're not really giving him an answer. But he asked a similar question, the wise son. So if he asks a similar question, why don't you give him an answer? He deserves an answer, right? But he can't answer an answer. He's got an agenda. He's totally got an agenda, right? And something like that, when I was in the States, they had their agenda. I got hammered. I was never going to win. Never going to win. I answered certain things. What are you going to do? It's only damage control. I didn't get offended. I knew where they were coming from. I got a phone call earlier on Friday before Shabbos. I got a chance to call the person back. And, what do they have to say? I'm glad they called, etc. Right? But, what do they have to say? So they said, what's going on in Israel and all these protests. I'm not going to get political. All these protests going on, and different things against this judicial reform. Right? Against this judicial reform, right, that's going on. So everyone on the left is screaming, and they're saying that, what a terrible thing. It's going too fast, and, it's crazy, and blah, blah, blah. Most people who are arguing this have no idea what's going on with the Supreme Court and what they've done, over the years, and how corrupt it is and all this. They're trying to, make the Supreme Court like every other place in the world. Not give them jurisdiction and things they shouldn't have jurisdiction in, period. Overstepping their boundaries. But anyway, so what they hammer me about, and they left this message. They hammered me. It's the right wing, and I hate the right wing, and I hate the right wing in the States, I hate the right wing here. And these religious people, they're doing this, doing that, then I'm just telling you my opinion. Okay. Right? I'm gonna have this conversation tomorrow. Most likely tomorrow. So what am I going to do? They're going to talk. They don't really care what I have to say, but they're going to talk. And I was going to say, well, the facts on the ground show differently. No Supreme Court anywhere in the world overturns legislation by a government. You don't see it. Doesn't exist except by them. Right? They feel they have a right to intervene and whatever. They intervene in things that doesn't concern them. If it comes in front of them, it's one thing. The American Supreme Court, how many cases they hear a year? Doesn't, maybe more. They don't put their jurisdiction where it doesn't belong, overthrowing government policy and different things. It's nuts. Totally nuts. It's been going on for years. For years. Anyone who knows anything about, Israeli politics. Because I hate the right and and this reform, they're crazy, they're gonna make a dictatorship. They don't know the facts. Not even close to knowing the facts. So I'm gonna be very nice. I'm gonna be very nice. I'll say, listen, this is what's going on. This is really what's going on. They're not gonna hear it, but I am gonna defend it a little bit. I'm gonna say exactly what I said. They have jurisdiction where it doesn't belong. They're trying to curb it. It's not threatening democracy. It's protecting it. We're not going to go into, we're not going to have a theocracy over it. That's not the point of it. Even the left agrees. Certain things have to be changed, but they say we don't want radical changes. It should be slower. Put it off a little. Okay. But even the left agrees. They don't necessarily disagree. A totally corrupt system. Totally corrupt system. Imagine you have your own, justices approving who's going to be on the Supreme Court. Well, that's Pakistan's Supreme Court, isn't it? It's putting in people like you, who think like you, who want to be like you. So what's going to happen? It's called cronyism. Look it up. Google it. Cronyism. That's what it is. Totally corrupt system. Right? If you know what goes on, in Israel with this, so If you don't know, okay. So again, I'm going to be very nice. I don't think it's going to get me anywhere. I was going to say, you got to know the facts. If you know the facts, very good. Right? But it's not, some of these things, it's just like, that's what I feel. That's what I believe. Okay. Based on, which I said when I was in the States, based on, this is what I think. That's what's in my heart. Okay, it's not based on facts. If you don't base it on facts, you're only based on what you think, then, who has to listen to such a claim? I'll be nice, I'll hear it out, but, like I said when I was in the States, so what you're saying is based on, you have sources, Bible, prophets, the writings, Torah, you have proof where it comes from. And the person said, no, but this is deep in my heart. Okay. They didn't tell me anything. All they said is what's in their heart. Okay. Based on nothing. Based on what their mind tells them, what society tells them. They're not based in fact. I mean, person asks questions that, kind of hard to answer. True. Why the right to suffer? Don't know. It's a good question. Talking about reincarnation, other things. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear possible explanations. There's one excuse. So God can't be good. Okay. It's a hard question. I'm not going to say no. It's a legitimate question. But do you want to hear the answer? Like someone will say, well, where's God during the Holocaust? Oh, I got a great book. Right? It's called Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. You want to read it? No. It's just a question I make rabbis, ask rabbis, make them fidget. Okay. So you're not interested in an answer. So if someone has an agenda, you don't answer them. There's no answer. The answer is, oh, or okay. What are you going to answer? I think Judaism discriminates against women. Okay. I think once they start saying that's an opinion question. An opinion is an agenda. If it's an agenda, I don't have any obligation to answer. Right? And we shouldn't get caught up in these things. Because they're going to say, no, you don't know what you mean. It means this, it means that. They didn't ask a question. They're coming at you with their claws, trying to rip you to shreds. And I believe that. Okay. They'll go like this. Let them talk. Don't mean anything. They're not based on anything. Yeah. Someone asked, "Oh, do we have to get married when we convert?" No. I think it's better. Mentioned this before. I think it's better for, the Gemara says better for a woman to be married than not married, right? Obligation? No. I've heard some people say, I don't believe it's true, but I've heard some people say that, they were told, they have to get married or they have to have a certain amount of kids or whatever until, if they want to convert. Not written anywhere. It's totally not true. It's just I think it's just a line to blow people off. Say, oh, you want to convert? This is what you have to do. No, right? Does the woman have to get married? No. Does a guy have to get married? Be better, certainly for a guy, no question, right? But again, obligation? No. Someone asked, this is a more difficult question, I think. Can you tell us the difference between religion and personal faith? First of all, we don't believe Judaism is a religion. Judaism is a way of life, right? People call it a religion, whatever, but it's really, we'd say it's a way of life. For Jews and non-Jews don't have to convert. If they want to convert, very good. If they don't, also good. They can have a portion of the world to come, right? No question. No question. But what is faith based on? What is personal faith based on? Personal faith should be based on what the Torah says, what God wants from us. In other words, how do we know that God exists? Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, God took us out of Egypt. How do I know God took us out of Egypt? Sorry, how do I know God is God? Because he took us out of Egypt. God took us out of Egypt. So if God took us out of Egypt, he intervenes in history. Very good. He intervenes in history, not a leap of faith, right? Because, we've spoken many times, about the fact how many generations went to Passover Seder? 4. Yeah, the, great-grandfather, grandfather, son, and a father and the son, right? You need 80 of those generations to go back to Mount Sinai, right? So faith, what's faith based on? Our faith is based on knowledge, right? In other words, the belief in God is because God intervenes in history. God intervenes in history, right? That's not faith. That's passed down generation, right? So we have to work on our personal faith because we go through difficulties, we go through hardship, right? But what is our faith based on? A lot of tenets. God is one. God is unique. God runs the world. I can put my best foot forward and get a 0 and get a goose egg. God can say, no, I don't want to help you, or I want to make life more difficult. Personal faith means that I'm working in hand with what God wants from me. Even if it's hard. Even if it seems like it's impossible. Personal faith means God's in charge. I have to put my best foot forward. And is putting my best foot forward a guarantee for success? No, not a guarantee. You would think if I do this, I do that, I do the other thing, isn't that going to make me successful? Yeah, but you're missing a very important point. What's the very important point? Very important point is God. God's the X factor. So a person's faith, God forbid, can get shattered when we go through difficulty. We go through a lot of difficulty. And we don't see any way out of it. And we see that we just keep getting beaten down in life. So a person will say, yeah, I've had this happen, I've had that happen, I've had the other thing happen. So where does my faith come from? Faith comes from understanding God runs the world. Faith comes from understanding God put us in a position for whatever reason. Whatever reason I'm in this position now. Right? But that's based on the fact that we understand God runs the world. Now, do non-Jews have to acknowledge that? No. That part of the Noahide laws? No. Is it a good thing to understand God runs the world? Yeah. But someone's going to ask, but I don't get it. It's so hard. Things don't make sense. There's a lot of tragedy in the world. True. A lot of people suffer. True. So why is that? That's the question. That's really the question, right? Is why do all these things happen, right? Why do all these things happen, right? So we don't have good answers, essentially. They're going to satisfy everyone. Bottom line is God is in control. So what do I have to do? I have to work harder. I have to study harder. I have to fix myself better, right? Have better character traits. Right? We wrote a whole thing. It was, a bunch of tragedies. It happened in Jerusalem, in the last few weeks. And he said, one of the things we have to do is strengthen ourselves. Strengthen ourselves, keeping Torah, keeping mitzvahs, working hard. That's what we have to do. But the bottom line is, we don't know what it's going to be. This is what, unfortunately, this is what it's supposed to be. The end of days, we're going to have this curse of the, of Yishmael, of the Muslims. It's not going to end till the Messiah comes. It's only going to get worse. God forbid. It's only going to get worse. So what about faith? What about belief? So, yeah, you got to work on that also. But, a person has to strengthen themselves in Torah and mitzvahs as much as they can. Learn more. Study more. Work hard on what they have to do. They're going to say, but there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of difficulty. True. 100% true. But this is what's going to happen. This is what, God forbid, happens by the end of days. And we have to go through this for whatever reason. But the answer is, we don't know. We want to know. We want to understand. But guess what? God is infinite. We don't understand his ways. It's impossible to understand his ways. On every fast day, we read from the prophets. God says, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. Period. But see, we live in this cream puff generation, and we all want to know. We want answers now, yesterday, the day before, right? People, I get texts all the time. This is hard and that's hard and I'm not functioning well because I'm under all this pressure and different. Okay, true. May very well be true. And I want God to take it away. And okay, so what are you doing to fix it? People want quick fixes. There are no quick fixes. You got to work hard. You got to study hard. You got to believe hard. But you got to work. No free pass over here. Think God, God's going to roll the red carpet. You start taking on Torah mitzvahs, everything becomes easy. Think again about what life is. Life, the Ramchal says in Path of the Just, is a constant struggle. It's a constant battle day in and day out. That's what it is. Whether with family, whether with friends, whether with, livelihood, health, kids, everything combines. There's no free lunch over here. I'm not saying people can't complain and say they're suffering and, going through difficulty. We all have difficulty. Question is how we deal with it and how we look at it. So what's a person's faith based on? The fact that God's in charge and he runs the world. That's what it's based on. He's the one in charge. Yeah, but we get a little difficulty. Things are hard. Guess what? That's life. That's what life is. The greater the person, the harder the test. So you say, but it's not fair. So I'm going to say something absolutely controversial now. Absolutely controversial. And what's the answer? What's going to be so controversial? And that is, life has nothing to do whether it's fair or not. All right, let that sink in. Life is not about what's fair. God runs the world. We may think and look at it and say, oh, guess what? It's not fair. You're working hard and this and that, but there are so many obstacles. So many obstacles, okay? We all have them. We all have them. Nobody wants to go through them. People want them to go away, okay? I'm not denying that, right? A person, has these difficulties, you pray, you work hard to have them go away. Could take months, could take years, could take weeks, whatever it is. But we want instantaneous results. Instantaneous results do not exist. They don't exist. So we're here for the long run, for the long haul, so to speak. That's what we're here for. But people want to know, what's the measure for measure? What's this? What's that? We live in a world, as the Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy, in a world of Hester b'toch Hester panim. In a world where God's ways are totally hidden. 100%. So now someone's going to come along and say, but I want to know the measure for measure. Moshe Rabbeinu himself asked God, I want to see your face. Meaning, I want to understand what goes on in this world right now. What does God answer him? He says, no. He says, no one can see my face and live. You can only see things maybe in hindsight. You don't see things at face value. We don't get it, we don't see it. So I think people have to understand, if God answered Moses and he says, you can't see me face to face, what are you going to ask the question for? You can't ask that question. Because if God himself said to Moses, you can't understand, what are we going to answer? But you have to show me? You have to show me compared to Moshe Rabbeinu? Come on. God's not going to do that. And if I were God, I certainly wouldn't do it. Who are you? Who are you to ask me that? You're going to say, what do you mean? I just want to know why. God is infinite. You have to remember, God created the world. God keeps the world going. He does a lot of things we can never do, ever. In 10 lifetimes, 20 lifetimes, 50 lifetimes. Never going to happen. If God's ways are infinite, we're not going to get it. We're not going to understand. That's not a leap of faith. That's not a leap of faith. And it's not a cop-out. People say, oh, you just believe, just have faith. No. It's faith with knowledge. Belief with knowledge. Right? But the problem is people want a quick fix. And they want the answers now. Well, guess what? Doesn't work that way. Maybe after a certain amount of time, maybe God will open your eyes. Maybe you'll see. Maybe you won't. God owes us. What does he owe us? Gives us life. Gives us air. Gives us water. Doesn't owe us anything. Zero. Doesn't need us. 100%. He doesn't need us. So now you got a question. You can say, my life is hard. Okay. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not disagreeing. Doesn't mean he has to answer us. Right? Not in any way, shape, or form. Someone constantly promises you something, breaks their promises. Again, I've spoken about that. Spoken about that before. How's that affect you? Affect you in a negative way because you don't trust them. Totally don't trust them. If a person says, yeah, I'm going to do this and do that, and they don't do it, and they don't do it for a long time, they keep saying the same thing over, so don't listen to them. It's a mitzvah not to listen to such a person. They're a liar. The Torah, tell me, you're not supposed to lie. So someone constantly lies, that's what they're doing. They're breaking promises, that's a lie. They say, no, I will do this. And they don't. And they say it again. They say it a third time and 10 times. How does it affect the other person? You don't trust them. That's how it affects you. Right? Because the person kept constantly telling someone to do this, that, and the other thing, and they keep saying, yeah, I will, and they don't trust them. So how does that affect you? You don't trust them. Why is it better or how for women? Because women, the question was, The question is, is it better or not better for a woman to be married? Why do I say it's better? Why does the Gemara say it's better? Right? Because women usually are more protected if they're married than they're not. Not saying, a woman is necessarily a wuss, so we're not talking about strength and different things, right? But a woman would, I would think, wants to have a meaningful relationship, be attached to someone. Yeah, a woman can have negative experiences, true. Could have a lot of negative experiences and say, I'll never get married. I'm not interested in getting married. Never interested. Okay, it's their choice. A man, you might say it's better for him to be married just because of his evil inclination. Yeah, but think about, as the Gemara says, you're talking about a different time period, where, women weren't protected. So for them, there are all kinds of issues. So therefore, the Gemara says, in that time, yeah, it's better for them. Better for them to be married, be taken care of for different things. Today, it's a different thing. Why? Women are out there in the fields, sometimes have better jobs than men, all kinds of things. So you might say, well, maybe today that wouldn't apply, in some ways. Because they'll say, well, what do I need the guy for? What do I need him for? I can take care of myself. I don't need to be, what's a man's obligation? Signs a ketubah, a Jewish document, marriage document. He's got an obligation to clothe her, give her, clothing, a house, conjugal rights. So she can say, I can afford, what do I need that for? I got my own money. I don't need your money. She can make a condition. Whatever money I make, whatever money you make, she can make a condition, say, I don't want it. I don't want you to support me. I can support myself. Okay. That doesn't mean she has to get married, but way back when it wasn't the case. So it was better to be with someone. Definitely. Be taken care of. Today might be a different issue. Might be, totally might be a different issue. Should a woman marry just to marry? No, not at all. We're not saying that. Right? So way back when it was the idea of protection. As a way of being taken care of physically. Physical things. But today, perfectly, I don't, I don't need that. I got a great job, making a lot of money. So I don't need your support. I don't need this, so to speak. So it might be different. It might be different in some way. But I would think that, if possible, a woman would rather be with someone else than be alone. Companionship. Everyone needs companionship. Some people say, I've been so burnt by it, forget it. I'd rather just be alone. Okay. That's their choice. Would that be the norm? Would that be the norm? No. Wouldn't be the norm. Right? Everyone needs companionship. Everyone needs to be with someone else. But doesn't always work out. Right? Maybe, certainly marriage hasn't worked out. That's been a disaster. 100% a disaster. No question. Total disaster. Right? 50, 60% divorce rate, disaster. So, for a guy, we'll say, for him to be married, go, to keep in line his evil inclination. Yeah. That makes sense. For a woman, so you tell me way back when, very good. So she needs that protection, need to be with someone, be taken care of, fine. So you can say, well, maybe that's not the case today. Because, women have better jobs, different things. That may not be the case. Right? Totally may, not be the case. Marriage obligation, just the opposite. Right? The claim here is that marriage obligation will take away serving God in the community. No, just the opposite. Right? It's a way for a person to give to someone else. Right? A person needs their other half. Right? That's why a man has to give something under the canopy. He's, sort of quote unquote like an acquisition. It's not really an acquisition, right? Without getting into all that. But he's missing something. He's missing something over here. Doesn't necessarily say she's missing something. But at the same time, he can't do anything without her. Right? So, so in that sense, they work together, they serve God together. He helps her, she helps him. They do a lot of chesed together, acts of loving kindness, right? One to the other, by giving one to the other. A lot of things. That doesn't take away from serving God, just the opposite. It can help solidify serving God, helping a person reach their potential because they're helping in a way that you can't imagine. If they weren't married, they wouldn't give unconditionally. Because the Gemara says, hard thing to understand, the Gemara says a man has to love his wife more than himself. Now, what's the problem with that statement? What's the problem with that statement? Problem is nobody loves anyone more than themselves. Nobody. Right? So that's a hard thing. That, that in spiritual terms, a very hard thing to understand. In physical terms. Because, man is a selfish being, is a selfish creature. So in general, being selfish, you have to learn to give to someone else. So that's a hard thing. But you have to give unconditionally. And spouses can drive the other spouse up the wall. Different things they do, different things they say, different nuances. True. We all have quirks. We all have different things. Certainly takes getting used to, no question. Right. But if husband and wife are together, and they're going in the right path and going in the right way, that brings God down to their house. Right. That brings godliness there. Now, can there be things that go on that aren't good? Yeah. That doesn't, I would say just the opposite. It gives an opportunity to draw closer to God. It works on things you would never work on if you weren't together with another person. Which, you're giving of yourself more than you ever thought. Right? So for a husband, all you guys out there, so for a husband, yeah, it's, you got to do things for a spouse you would never do for you, even if you never do it for yourself. So it's kind of a hard thing. You say, well, if I wouldn't do it for myself, why would I do it for you? Right? So what's the answer? Because you're willing to go the extra mile, even if you wouldn't do it. What does that do? That shows you want to go beyond the letter of what I have to do. Like, this is this is our agreement. No such thing. A person grows together, they live together, people that have different quirks, different things. Okay. But there are things in both cases, with both spouses, that they give into the other things they wouldn't necessarily do. I'm not saying it's dangerous things, necessarily, or whatever the case is, but they're giving in to things they normally wouldn't. What does that do? That's chesed. That's absolute an act of loving kindness, because they don't have to, they would never do that for themselves, but that would make you happy. Okay. Not something forbidden. God forbid, that draws the bond closer, or it should, because you're going out of your comfort zone. Now, I'm not saying everything out of your comfort zone you have to do. I'm not saying that. Definitely depends on what it is, right? But if you know that's going to make your spouse happy, even if you wouldn't necessarily do it, okay. Right? Why are you doing it? Because you want to please the other person. And pleasing the other person, is worth a lot. It's worth a lot. Now, does that mean you always get along and there's not stress? It could be. There definitely could be. Raising kids can be stressful. Livelihood, there's no money, it could be stressful. A lot of things can be stressful, can take its toll in a marriage. There's no question. But the marriage is strong. No matter what happens, and they're in it together, then whatever it's going to be, they're going to survive. Might be hard, but they're in it together. So they're able to give to the other, even more than they would give of themselves. So I would say, so the Gemara says for a guy, that's what he's got to do. He's got to give more of himself. He's got to do things he even wouldn't do himself. Okay. That's kind of, again, we love ourselves more than we love anyone else. We're going to look out for ourselves first, right? No question. But now you got different obligations. Now, does that mean a woman doesn't have an obligation, for a husband? No, it doesn't mean that. she also has to give in, certain things, whatever it is, right? Go outside of her comfort zone, do chesed as well. Does she have to love him more than herself? The Gemara doesn't say that. Because man himself is selfish. Men in general are selfish. All you men out there, you're all selfish. Right? It's something we have to work on. Women by nature are more givers. They're more attentive. Kids are screaming. Guys walk out of the room. Women can deal with it. I'm not saying men can't be trained. Different, totally different. Women are naturally, again, I get in trouble for this because of what's going on today, but it doesn't matter. Women are naturally more givers than men. Psychologically proven. Can a man, can he be trained to a certain extent? He can also be a giver, but that's not something that comes natural. There are men out there that will break this mold, and they're unbelievable givers. I wouldn't say it's a norm. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the norm, because again, we are a selfish creature. In general, man is not necessarily one that wants to share. Right? They have to be taught. They have to share. They have to give. They have to, they have to listen, even if the woman doesn't, she's just venting. And what's the guy going to say? Oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. And they're trying to solve the problem. That's not why she's venting. Right? She's venting because she's venting. She's not looking for an answer. Right? So sometimes guys will say, yeah, but, I have this answer, but she wasn't asking it. She just wants to be heard. Right? So, we have to change our philosophical outlook, the way we would do things, the way they do things. Right? It's, it's a whole catch-22. Some things we're good at, some things we're worse at, and sometimes we might have to be trained. We might have to be, women, their job not necessarily, train their husbands, but, certain basic things. I think men certainly need to learn. I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any question, but it's a two-way street to do chesed, to do acts of loving kindness here. So if it's a two-way street, then that's going to help them serve God, not take them away. All right, that's what I would say. Someone asked, what about professional soldiers? Well, you need professional soldiers, right? Certainly here in Israel, no question, right? Everyone, people serve. Now, can people serve in a, they have to serve 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is? Do they have to serve more than that? Should they serve more than that? They can. If someone wanted to be a professional soldier, could they be? They could. You're putting your life in danger. Okay, that's a whole discussion. How much are you obligated to put your life in danger? You need a standing army, right? Most places definitely need a standing army. Now, does that mean a person has to be a professional soldier their whole life? No, certainly not. They want to serve, or they're obligated to serve. That's one thing, right? They want to go further, and be in the armed services the whole life, and retire, whatever. Okay. The question would be, it's like any dangerous thing. Any dangerous thing. Can a person, what I think is something, can a person be a firefighter? Police officer? Right? That's a dangerous thing. Putting their life in danger. Totally putting their life in danger. So they're totally putting their life in danger. How are they allowed to? Because you need firefighters. You need people in the police to keep order. But it's a dangerous situation. So maybe let someone else do it. Why do I have to do it? Whatever person wants to. So they're allowed to. They're allowed to put their life on the line to protect others. To keep society, where it needs to be. They're allowed to. But you're putting your life in danger. Okay. We hold that's permissible. I mean, not everything like that is necessarily permissible, per se, but this would be okay. So a person wanted to be a professional soldier. What if you're like either in your own army or you're a mercenary, for other armies or whatever? Are you allowed to? You're allowed to. if it's about protecting your own land, I would say that's a much easier permissibility. Why? Because you're protecting your own country. Can you be a mercenary and fight for others? That might be a different issue. Yeah, protecting democracy, other things, could be it's okay. Could be it's okay. Could be you're putting your life in danger. We don't have to. Right? But again, for a person to be a professional soldier, they're allowed to be. They're allowed to be. Someone asks, does God get pleasure from doing mitzvahs? A non-Jew. Yeah. Why not? If they're doing the right thing. Right? If they're doing the right thing, why not? A non-Jew can't give pleasure to God, says. Right? If they're doing the right thing and what they need to do, so sure. Like, certainly please God. If they're doing the wrong thing, it's worse. that I would say for sure. Right? But if they're doing the right thing, does God get pleasure? Yeah. When we do the right thing, he gets pleasure. Right? When it says that God got pleasure from the sacrifice we brought, Rashi says, what does it mean pleasure? It's like God smelled the smoke. It's like, it's got like this big nose, so to speak. And he's like, wow, what incense. Unbelievable. No. What does Rashi say? The fact that we did what we're supposed to do. In other words, they gave the sacrifices. And God was happy. Not with the aroma. It has nothing to do with the aroma. God was happy because we did what we're supposed to do, what we're obligated to do. So if a non-Jew does the right thing, can have a portion of the world to come and be great in God's eyes? Sure. No question. If they do the wrong thing, yeah, it's also bad. Just like a Jew does the wrong thing. It depends what it is. Someone says, yeah, in England, people curse. Everyone curses. The whole world curses. I was in the States. I heard plenty of people curse. So what are you going to do? They curse. You have to hear it. Right? Doesn't that make you more susceptible to curse? Maybe. But a lot of times you can't control it. You can't control what someone else is going to say. But could there be more professions that people curse more than others? Yeah, it could be. Yeah, definitely could be. A person in the army, are they going to have clean language? I would think not. I would think the language is probably pretty bad. But is that any worse than any other place? Maybe. Maybe it is. The lawyers curse? Sure they do. Do accountants curse? Yeah. Doctors curse? Sure. You want to say, well, in the army, you got lower class people, they curse a lot more. Could be. I haven't taken a survey, but that could be true. Very well could be true. Yeah, maybe certain things to stay away from because of that element. Could be. But a person says, well, I'm not going to curse like that. I'm not going to this. And this is what I want to do. Okay, so they could. I don't think that's necessarily an issue, per se. But yeah, it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. Some places I would say it probably worse than others. Okay. People curse. Old people curse. Young people curse. That's what it is. And nobody said, I can't believe you curse like that. I never heard that when I was in the States. I can tell you that. People cursing and whatever. Anyone said, how do you speak like that? Nobody said such a thing. Right? It's the way of the world. It's the way of the world. Some people more, some people less. Right? But no one thinks a person who curses is, it's not refined. Like a truck driver. No offense to any truck drivers out there. Oh, it's like a truck driver. He speaks like a fiend. Who cares? Anyone's going to say anything? No. If they constantly curse one thing after another, then okay, maybe. Maybe. But if someone curses, out of the blue and says, oh, this or F that, or, whatever, but they're not constantly, one thing after another, but it comes out every so often, yeah, that's the way of the world. We're not going to stop that. We're going to tell someone, I can't believe you just cursed. I'm like, deal with it. I curse, so what? But again, if it's something where people curse all the time, yeah, one thing after another, yeah, that's worse. I would agree. I would definitely agree. Someone asks, how long after Hashem talked to Noah would I guess it took him to build the ark? Well, Rashi says Rashi says he built an ark for 120 years. Took him 120 years. The irony is, it took him so long, and no one repented. If he was involved in Jewish outrage, he would have failed. They wouldn't have hired him. Everyone asked him, Noah, what are you doing? He said, I'm building an ark. It's going to be a flood. They look up, San Diego weather, 75 and sunny all year round. They're like, yeah, good luck. They made fun of him. They tried to bully him. Different things. He said, okay, you'll die. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. End of the conversation. So he didn't do such a great job bringing people back. Right? But Rashi says 120 years. So someone asked, so why didn't he rebuke people? He did. He didn't go as far as Abraham did. That's why one opinion is if he would have been in Abraham's generation, it would have been considered anything. It wasn't like Abraham. He didn't rebuke them. Why didn't he? Says he probably thought they wouldn't listen. So why should I rebuke them? It's like, so the conversation kind of went like this. Noah, what are you doing? So I'm building an ark. It's like, why are you building an ark? So he says, well, God said to me, he's going to bring a flood. They look up, and they make fun of him. And they bully him. So what's he going to try? He's going to bring all these proofs of God's existence? No. He felt, okay, they're not going to listen anyway. Right? The Torah says, this is before the Torah is given, though. It says that you have an obligation to rebuke your people. But some will say, well, I have an excuse not to rebuke. Why not? Because they're not going to listen. Well, that doesn't always apply. Very complex, by the way. Very, very complex, this whole thing. Right? Without getting into it. But he felt they weren't going to listen. So maybe he thought, not going to listen. Why bother? I told them what was going to happen. I said God spoke to me. They don't want to listen. Okay. Right? They're making fun of me. They're bullying me. So why should I help them? Why should I try and convince them? They're not interested. So if they're not interested, I don't have to rebuke them. Right? So that's one of the reasons he's punished. And he runs around feeding all the animals in the ark. And he got there a little bit late for the lion. And the lion, whacked him and he became, limp from it. So why? Why do you have to do that? Because he didn't do chesed. He didn't do acts of loving kindness with his generation. So he got punished. Right? He got punished. And even though he got saved, the rest of the generation was bad and he's considered a prophet and all that, very good, but he didn't do chesed, he didn't do acts of loving kindness with his generation. And he should have been out there trying to convince them. He didn't. Again, why not? Well, my guess would be that he thought that, they're not going to listen. So why waste my breath? I got better things to do. I'm building this ark. I'm building, it's wasting my time. You're going to sit there and make fun of me? Go take a long walk off a short pier. Go blow. I got better things to do. I got better things to do with my time. That's what he did. Because he felt they would never listen. All right, that's my guess. Someone asked high level for Noahites to do the mitzvah so that Hashem is very happy about the Noahide. Let me make one thing clear. Noahites have an obligation 100%. They're keeping the Noahide laws because God said. Because God passed the Torah down to Moses and passed it down to us. Right? When they keep the Noahide laws, they have to keep that in mind. They have to keep that in mind. Right? So if they're keeping the Noahide laws, why are you keeping it? You're keeping it for a number of reasons. One reason is either you believe it's the right thing. And if you believe it's the right thing, you listen to what God says. And de facto, if you're doing the right thing, God's going to be happy with what you do. Now, someone's going to say, well, if I do the mitzvahs because I'm going to make God happy. Okay, but you got an obligation to do it anyway. Whether God's happy the way you did it or he didn't do it. Right? So you're going to say, well, it's at a high level to do it because God is happy. You're doing it because you got no obligation. You want to make God happy? Okay. Right? You definitely can make God happy by doing it. Is it a mitzvah for Noahites to love God more than themselves? No. They have to believe in God. Yeah, they have to love God. They have to love God more than themselves. I mean, nobody loves themselves more than anyone else. Right? But the love we have for God is like a son to a father. So, when it comes to a person's father, if they're still in this world, right, and everything's good, you love your father more than yourself? Nobody does. You love your father a lot, let's say. Well, hopefully, right? You don't love them more than yourself. So does a non-Jew have an obligation? Jew doesn't have that obligation. We have to serve God. We have to love them with all our heart, with all our soul, and all that. That's true. Very true. We're not more than ourselves. Certainly not. Yeah, let me see. There are other questions here. Someone asked, soul reincarnation. As a man and as a woman. Yeah. So if the soul comes back either as a man or a woman, yeah. Women are greater in population than men. Okay. Right. There are more women than men. It's true. Where does other male souls go? Well, you could have a male soul going a woman. That's a little bit complicated according to Kabbalah, right? But if a soul is going to come in the body, which it should, because all the souls have to come out, so it'll be either in the body of a woman or a man, right? But if you're talking about reincarnation, that's a different issue, right? It's not God's going to bring a soul first time in the world and put it in as an animal, or as a rock or something like that. Not going to do that. Going to put it in the soul of a person. And then whatever happens after that, then the soul may come back. Right? Now, what if they become gay? That's a different issue. If the soul, is it because you have a female soul in a male body, so therefore the male becomes gay? I don't know about that. There's no connection, no connection one to the other, so to speak. And either they become gay, so what? So let's say, we'll make it easy. A male soul goes into a male body. Okay. And that male becomes gay. So what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do? It goes to male body, female body. So what? It messed itself up. The body itself messed up the soul. Okay. That mean the soul is gay? No. Definitely not. Soul comes from the purest place. Starts off, when it goes into the body, it starts off at zero. Starts off at zero. The fact that the body does certain things, whatever it is, and the soul does these things because it's in the body, not the soul's choice. It messes up the soul in different ways, no question. Right? But the fact that, that person became gay wasn't due to the soul, soul's going to get severely punished. Doesn't mean it's a female soul in a male body or vice versa. I don't know. I heard someone make this claim. I think he's totally off his rocker, right? By saying that, well, this person, this boy was playing with with dolls at the age of 3. So of course, not surprised he became gay. So what are you telling me? He had a female body, he had a female thing? Yeah, I don't like fluff. I don't people making up things or taking Kabbalistic terms and, I don't know, turn it into a yo-yo. Say, oh, it's a female soul into a male body. Did this? Yeah, keep your mouth shut. That's what I would say. Keep your big mouth shut where you don't have to say anything. Right? People want to make all these claims. Person makes decisions. Let's make clear. Person makes decisions. Doesn't mean you don't necessarily have biases a certain way. You could. You definitely could. But who says you have to act on it? Even if you would say, when the soul went in the body, that soul is going to convince the body to be gay. It's the soul liable? 100%. Going to be liable because the body went after it. The body shouldn't have. How the body get convinced? I don't know. However, it got convinced. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. But it's very hard to say, if not impossible, to say, oh, this soul went in and, it's a gay soul. No such thing. No such thing. Soul goes in the body, it starts at 0. Starts at 0. That's what it does. Yeah, last thing here is someone asks, if a Jew dies, Kiddush Hashem, isn't that loving Hashem more than himself? If a Jew dies, sanctifying God's name, first of all, that means they had an obligation, let's say, certain things to sanctify God's name. right? And that's what God wanted him to do. That's what God wanted him to do. So, question is, isn't that loving God more than yourself? That's forgetting about your body and doing what God wants. Our obligation is to do exactly what God wants. That's our obligation, right? So, yeah, God comes before anything else. That's true. That's true. I'm just pointing out, you're right. I got to serve God and do whatever he says, 100%. But at the same time, when it comes to ourselves, we don't love anyone more than ourselves. But when it comes to God, you're right. We have an obligation to do what he says, regardless of what it doesn't matter if I love myself more, right? You're going to serve God. That's your obligation. So yeah, it's true, right? We are going to love God more than ourselves because we're going to do whatever it says, even if it costs our life. Even if it costs our life. True. Very true. Someone asked Shabbos Day Kiddush. Yeah. We say, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael. Guard the Sabbath. There, the Torah given, we said, Zachar Yom HaShabbos HaKadosh. So you have to remember Shabbos. In the book of Exodus, in Deuteronomy, it says you have to guard Shabbos. So we say, Zachar v'shamor t'ibor echad. God spoke to remember Shabbos, to guard Shabbos at the same time. We can't say two things at the same time. Right? So Friday night, we say that, so Shabbos Day, we say you have to guard Shabbos and you have to keep Shabbos. You have to remember Shabbos. Right? We do both. Right? That commemorates the fact that God said both things at the same time. That's why we say both. Right? That's what we say. We say Zachar Yom HaShabbos HaKadosh. Says whole paragraph. You have to remember Shabbos, right, etc. And then you say V'shamru b'nei Yisrael. You have to guard Shabbos. That's why we say both. That's exactly why we say both. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop there. Do this every Saturday, 2:00 Eastern time, 9:00 Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email at rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com.